Perfect. Hello. So, it has been a while since I have made a video. The last video I made was about 2 years ago. It was near the end of my first year of university, and I have now just finished university. And I thought, what a better time to get into a new hobby and also to continue my love of learning and literature than to share it with people. Basically, I'm going to be, hopefully, fingers crossed, making more videos about books in general, possibly some stuff about films, but I'm really interested at the moment in writing video essays and reviewing books and that sort of thing, just because I know I'm going to miss writing essays at university, and I think it might be fun to pick something that I am interested in, research it, and then share it with people. Today I'm going to be reviewing and talking about my top 4 books of university. I was at university for 3 years. I studied English literature. I'm just going to be talking a little bit about some of my favourite books from my modules. So I've made some notes in my notebook that I'm going to talk about, and yeah, I'm going to get to it. The first book I have is Why Did Sargasso Sea by Jean Rice. So I read this book in first year. It was part of my prose module. It's actually a prequel to Jane Eyre. Rice took the character of Bertha, who is Rochester's first wife in Jane Eyre, spoiler, and is often described as Jane's shadow self, possibly, like her dark side, but also what Reese has done is she explored that a bit more literally, kind of exploring the reality that Rochester probably would, in that time period, have had a slave or have had ownership of this woman Bertha. And it kind of explores her character a bit more and creates this whole new backstory for her. What I really got from this, there is loads of beautiful nature imagery and comparison. I love how it compares the climate of Jamaica to England and how Bertha possibly would have experienced that. But it kind of goes back through her family history. And looks at how she ends up being described as this mad woman in Jane Eyre. I really recommend this for anyone interested. I absolutely loved it. It was a book that I regularly thought about throughout my degree as well. When I was reading other things, I would often come back to how I felt reading this book and what I got from it. In second year, I took a module which was an introduction to feminism and gender. Most of my studies at university had a strong feminism and gender approach to them, just because that's what I was interested in. This was on that course. So I actually hadn't heard of it before. I'd kind of heard of Why Did Sargasso Sea before, but I had never heard of this book. And that is Cereus Blooms at Night by Shani Mutu. And it is now probably one of my favourite books, I would say. It just has a really nostalgic feel to the narrative that makes it feel very familiar, and I guess that's kind of the point. A lot of it is a remembering of different characters. A common theme to my favourite books from university is that they had a lot of nature imagery and metaphors involved in them, and I think one of the reasons I love this book so much is because it reminded me so much of Why Did Sargasso Sea, and the comparisons between those two narratives is really interesting because they're both really similar in how they present how these black women are being surrounded by nature and encompassed by it, and what restrictions are given to them. And I think it's just really interesting thinking about how nature and women are compared in literature. It also talked about queerness and gender. It is transgenerational as well, so it goes across I think 2 or 3 generations that are kind of interlinked, and all of their stories are interlinking, and it's just amazing. I absolutely loved it. I won't talk about too much more about this. I will put a trigger warning in here though. There is rape and some references to incest that happen in this book. So if those are things that are going to upset you, maybe this isn't the book for you. But I took so much from this. It's definitely my top favourite book I read at university, and it is now one of my favourite books. The third book, which is in my top 4, I read in a module called New World Orders, which I also did in my second year. Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. So particularly in terms of structuralism, this novel is really interesting for how it plays with time. There never really seems to be a definite construction of time in this novel, which can kind of make it hard to follow, but it was also very interesting to move from one time and setting fluidly into another. This novel was published in 1952 and it was set in 1945, just after the end of World War II, and how at the time black men were experiencing politics and civil rights, and kind of all of the different forces that were at play at the time in that debate. It even speaks as well about how communism and sometimes political movements commandeer race as a move to kind of gain acceptance and gain audience from other people when they're then not actually manufacturing those ideas and kind of manipulating people to come and join their cause in order to use them as a political key, basically. But one of the main things that's really interesting is the narrator very much is invisible throughout the entire novel, which is a good almost 600 pages long. The narrator is never named. If you are interested in thinking about how race was affected after emancipation still, and those kind of leftover oppressions that are very much still present today. This book was obviously, like I said, released in 1952, and a lot of it is still reminiscent of our society today. Then I would definitely recommend this book. My final book is The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. This one holds a special place in my heart. It was the book that I wrote my last ever university essay about, and it was therefore one of the last books I studied properly at university. As you can see, I enjoyed it a lot. I have actually recommended this book to a few friends since as well. This book was published in 2016, and it is an alternate fiction. So it is basically like a reimagining of history, and what history would be like if one specific detail was changed. And in this book, that detail is that the metaphorical Underground Railroad, which helped slaves to freedom in slavery, was actually a physical railroad. And that might not sound like it would affect things too much, but that is kind of the point of this novel. The main comment of this novel, I would say, is the hidden aspects of racial oppression. Again, much like Invisible Man, it kind of explores how slavery in some ways was existing even after emancipation, through the kind of ideas of the different states. Again, it plays with time and how kind of like time is used in this novel, and space as well. The Underground Railroad as an alternate history kind of allows for Whitehead to alter time and space and temporality for the narrator, and for her to explore many different places and types of oppression. It was also really action-packed. I basically couldn't put this book down. Again, trigger warning, there are mentions of rape in this book, so if that is something that you are going to find upsetting, then please don't read it. To conclude, love this book, love the pacing, very harrowing, would definitely recommend. That concludes all of my 4 top favourite books of university. Please let me know some of the favourite books that you have studied before, whether that is at university, at school. Do you have any books that you're looking forward to studying? Do you have any questions about studying English literature as well? If people have a lot of questions, I can answer those. Do people have questions about what I want to do with my life, what I want to do with my degree? Thank you for the support and love from everyone, and yeah, have a great day.